Hey, it's Blister Guy. I'm leaving the house and I'm walking to work, and that should give me enough time for an episode of Concede.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings.
My greeting. Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 133 of Concede, Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. Joining us all from Gadgets and New York, it's me, your host, RidiculousHat. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our first week after surviving the Witchwood. We're still whispering. We haven't forgotten that. And that voice all the way from the other side of the continent, but still a whisper, from Karazhan, California, it is Botticus.
Hi, Hat.
Hi, Bot.
Hi, everybody.
And from the Maelstrom, Louisiana, we have our friend Appa. Witchwood. I will tell you that editing the audio, the noise gate I normally put in your audio, it took out the whisper, so I had to just cross my fingers and hope, and it was fine.
Oh my gosh.
Because I didn't want to lose the whispers. It's the essence.
Oh man, the
It is the
bleep.
name of the show. I actually haven't listened yet. I need to go listen to it.
The bleep is so perfect. You know exactly what you said, but it was family friendly. It was so great.
I mean, but you have to explain to the kids what was being bleeped there, and that's probably a little bit less family friendly. Anyways. And then we have
there a bleep right there. Well, son, Appa did a thing.
Yes.
So,
Appa sure did. We have a special guest this week. A guest that's been a friend of the show for a long time, but has never had a Wednesday night so keenly attuned to us until right now. Our friend from Netherstorm, Nevada, we have the great and wonderful Reganisprime. How's it going, man?
Hey, good. How are you guys doing?
So great that we can finally have you on, because right now we've just been telling stories to children at night about the terror of the wild ladder, and now we get to see you in the flesh.
It's great to be here. I'm glad it finally worked out.
yeah, I feel like every time we've wanted to or tried, it's like, nope, no can do. Got real people things to do. Sorry.
Yeah. Or I'm like, I have no time.
Yeah, it happens, but fortune favors us this week in the Witchwood, so thank you so much for taking time out to be here. Just to let everybody know what we're going to do. We're going to do what we always do. We're going to do the intro. We're going to talk about our ladder a little bit, though keep in mind that discussion will be moved mostly to the end of the show, because we've been getting a lot of questions as hosts. What are you playing? What should I craft? How do I beat Q-Block? And we're going to answer all those questions for you. We want to make sure we do so in due time, and that's going to be the meat of the show, so it's going to be moved to later in the episode under Dexplanation. So you'll hear a brief discussion, but it won't be everything that we're getting into like we usually meander before the news. News is pretty brief, tournaments is very brief, and then Dexplanation is going to be all those questions and our discussion about the experience of the ladder so far. But first, Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. And if you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. We'd like to thank our friend Diego B for joining as a patron. Thank you so much, Diego. All right. Hey, Appa, why don't you ask our good buddy over there a couple of those fine interview questions that you are known for?
All right, cool. Is that like my role now? I'm like the interviewer.
You're the
Is that
pretty
what I do?
face. For those audio listeners, he made a pretty face emoji, effectively. I don't know what else to call it.
You should take more pictures like that and less pictures with the
With the
turtle face.
with the chin
chin,
tower.
where I effectively become a caterpillar.
Yes.
All right. Anyways, so let's get to this. All right, Organos. So for those of our listeners who live under a rock on Twitter or don't use Twitter, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long you've been playing Hearthstone? Let's just start with those first before I ramble on too much.
All right. I started playing Hearthstone in the beta. I played WoW for 3 years in college, and then when I got married, I lost my free time. And so the only game that I was able to fit in was Hearthstone. But it was a great fit because I could still get to interact with all of the great WoW characters that I loved. And so I kind of bopped around, not really knowing what I was doing for a couple years. And I didn't really have any friends who played. And then it wasn't until like Blackrock Mountain and the Whispers of the Old Gods where I started seriously climbing ladder. And then when I moved to Kansas, I started listening to a bunch of Hearthstone podcasts, and that's where I kind of grew my friends base from. And around that time, I was getting a little bored with Standard, and I wanted to check out Wild just to see if it was easier to hit Legend or what it was like over there. And so when they announced the first Wild Open, I switched to Wild primarily in May of last year, and then I've been playing it ever since. I just enjoy it so much.
Well, you actually answered my next question, which was going to be, how'd you get into Wild? So what do you think you can attribute your ladder success to? And what do you find more enjoyable or more attractive about Wild compared to Standard?
I feel like my success has a lot of different aspects to it. It started back when I didn't even know that I was going to start building a foundation, because I just watched streamers play, and I had a little bit more free time in the early years before I had kids, and so yeah, I was watching streamers, and then just a bunch of experience from grinding games. Like, I wasn't very efficient at all, but I learned kind of the basics just through trial and error. A lot of the things that I've heard other podcasts talk about, so I wish I would have started listening sooner to them. And then most recently, it's been kind of the lifestyle that I've been forced into, where I only have free time before work, after work, for brief periods, and then my lunch break. And so breaking it up and having time to kind of decompress between games has really helped not tilt. And so while I don't get to put in the amount of games that I used to, I'm able to focus more and have a better win rate.
It's actually really cool. It's like not really a bad situation, but it's like making the best of like an unfortunate situation in relation to how many games you'd like to put in. So I think that's cool that like kind of being forced to break up the play periods is actually beneficial in terms of like keeping your mentality like straight.
Yeah, I would run myself into the ground playing hours on end, just trying to get wins. And so first time I hit Legend, I was at rank 1, fell to 5, thought about giving up, but was able to push back up. So I know what it feels like to tilt all the way down, and that was before rank 4, so thank goodness I stopped at 5.
So how do you really manage to balance Hearthstone with a busy life so successfully?
I want to start talking about something that I'm really passionate about, and I was able to think more about it yesterday when I saw Orange tweet about how he was just having a terrible win rate, and how everything you see on social media from other people just makes it look like everyone's having so much success. And I know with the limited amount that I tweet and interact, I'm just kind of sharing the highlights. But one thing I'm really passionate about is the person behind the gamer. And so I'm trying to be more transparent and honest And so honestly, there's a lot of times that I don't manage things well. I've had a lot of rough times with my family and not prioritizing things right. So thankfully, I'm at a little bit of a better spot now, to where one of the things that I've decided is in the evenings, that's all for my wife and my kids, and I don't get to play. Another reason I've never been able to make this podcast work, just because evenings is for them, and then we all go to bed early. But I mean, being a part of a family with kids has also kind of forced me into healthy habits that I didn't have in college, like eating and sleeping. So those parts definitely help with the balance, to where then when I do have the free time to play games, I've kind of done some of the prep work to where I'm in a good state of mind, and I don't have the stress of like, I know that I've taken care of my responsibilities with work and family, and so I'm able to feel a little bit more free, and that everything is in its right place.
Yeah, as the resident podcast college student, I can definitely attest to being not like forming not the best habits.
Yeah.
Like even today, like right before the podcast, I was like, all right, pre-show time. And I'm like, hold on, I need to finish my French homework. I'm not done yet. Because I just put it off all day playing Hearthstone and other stuff. And I should have been doing schoolwork. So I really admire your ability to kind of handle like a real family life and Hearthstone. Another thing I wanted to talk about is I know you have some interesting like personal goals that you kind of set for yourself, and some of them that you hit. And I wanted to talk about those a little bit and kind of figure out why you decided to make these goals. Like I know one of them is the you want to hit legend with each class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so just talk about those because I'm spacing out.
So I guess I'll mention it here just because it fits, so I'll mention it later. Something I've wanted with a bunch of different people doing different kinds of content creation. I've wanted to do something, but I never saw where I could fit it in. And so I started a blog, but there's one post there, and there'll probably just be one post for a while. But that's where I laid out kind of where the goals came from. And it started, I think it was back when I lived in Oklahoma, and I got bored at work and just took out a post-it note and wrote like the most insane things that I could think of. Because that was after I hit legend, and I was like, all right, I beat the game. And I was like, no, what kinds of crazy things are still out there? And so I wrote down getting all 9 classes golden, getting 12 wins with every class in arena. Not much progress there, but hitting legend on all the servers. And then most recently, after joining the Concede community and the season goals channel, which I really enjoyed, kind of writing things down to where I have something to look back on and kind of hold me to. And that's where I decided that I wanted to hit legend with all 9 classes. And so that's something that's kind of gone on for the last 6 months, and I was able to do it. And it was a lot of fun to get to see so many different sides of the game that I never thought I would get to see, because I thought I was just, especially with my limited time now, I was like, I'm just an aggro player, that's all I can do. But being able to branch out and be a little bit more well-rounded has been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people either consciously or subconsciously kind of fit themselves into like a persona of what they can and can't play. And I think branching out really helps you develop as a player, as well as like you get to do some cool stuff, like make giant Edwin Van Cleefs on, on turn 2. But yeah, I think that's something a lot of people can benefit from if they don't do that right now, is like branch out and play other styles of decks or other classes.
I think that's a really important point in that mentality of I'm an aggro player, I only want to play aggro, or I'm a control player, I only want to play control. Like, I think a lot of people get into these situations where they find success with something and they're like, I'm winning a whole lot with aggro, and then I try to switch to control and I don't understand it as well and I lose a bunch. And so it's so easy to just go back to, well, I was winning with this, I can continue winning with this. But if you want to grow, I'm sure we've said it 100 times on the podcast, if you want to grow as a player, playing the other archetypes and getting proficient with them is just super important, and actually makes you play the other matchups even better when you get that point of view. So I think that's very important thing to do, is try, failing is kind of important, because it sucks to fail, but you can learn a lot from it.
Yeah, 2 things are important: failing and playing priest. I know both are distasteful, but you have to do both if you want to be well-rounded as a player. But I do agree, Appa, everyone should be playing big Edwin Van Cleefs. I think that just makes everybody's Hearthstone better. Not your opponent, but yours.
I use that example because I didn't play Rogue for the longest time, because I was on Twitter, excuse me, following like pros and like Casey and Chess Dude when he still played, and like some other just like really good Hearthstone players, and they would always talk about how like Rogue's difficult to play and everything, and like it has a lot of different like lines of play. So for me, like just like starting to get into Hearthstone, trying to learn stuff, that was like really intimidating for me. So I never really tried Rogue. Like one of the first games I tried it, I was like, okay, my hand does nothing, but I have this Edwin. I just made like a 12-12 Edwin. And then I just like went hit, game over. It's
Congrats,
like,
you're a Rogue player. Class
oh,
isn't
this
that difficult.
This is Rogue. Neat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's a very intimidating class. I don't mean to digress, but you brought up my baby, so I have to talk about it. It's I think probably the most frequently last golden class, or like least played class. I hear and see that so often from so many people, because the cards are definitely, it's a puzzle that you have to fit together. It's a lot less linear. And I think that once people get past the idea of these crazy combo turns they always lose to from rogues, and just like hit people in the face, it becomes a lot more straightforward, but it doesn't seem obvious to begin with, and it has a lot fewer of the defensive tools that other classes have. I don't know, I've heard from so many people, I'm not a rogue player, I don't get rogue every time I play it, I don't get it, but there's so much to love. Just love.
It's a very polarizing class.
Just go hug a Valera. If you see a Valera, just go hug one.
No Maev. We don't want to hug Maev.
Maev does not look like she wants a hug.
Maev.
That is not a woman that wants a hug. She's all set.
All right,
I wouldn't ask.
I got one last question for you, Reganus.
Okay.
Do you want to do a podcast with us?
Oh, of course.
All right, cool. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's talk about ladder. Botticus, tell us about your situation with ladder. What have you been playing? Give us the short version, because the long version's coming later. But also let us know where you are right now.
Short version is I actually haven't played that much this last weekend. I was really busy doing UHL things, and I really wanted to play a lot, so I'm making efforts to be able to play more, because I want to play more. But anyway, so I'm kind of slowly falling on NA on the Legend ladder. Haven't played a ton, have like a very 50-50 win rate. And then last night I played on Asia, played some Q Block, and got up to rank 2. It was a pretty solid session. Turns out Q Block's still pretty good. 0 new cards. I opened up my pre-order, and then I was like, nah, no new cards. Just let's replace these 3 cards, the 2 mistresses and the N'Zoth, and we're good to go.
Just like pre-expansion 27, 3 fillers, get in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Good enough. I mean, the card I've seen most frequently from this expansion, that deck, that's actually stuck around is Voodoo Doll. usually as a one of. But
Yeah, I
otherwise,
didn't open any of those.
otherwise it's been like Stonehill Defenders.
Yeah, I played the deck the day the expansion released, and I hit Legend with it. And I since there were the 3 like open spots that you needed to fill, I put in the Lord Godfrey. He's okay, and then I put in 2 Rat Catchers, which I was actually really impressed with. So I was playing just like against a bunch of different stuff, and it's like a fairly flexible card. And frequently people would just have big minions that I needed to kill. I'm like, Rat Catcher, eat my Void Lord, kill your dude. They're like, oh, I already silenced this other like possessed lackey or something. And then I just had this giant dude ready to hit him next turn. So I like Ratcatcher a lot, and I haven't seen him in a lot of lists, which actually kind of surprised me. But I guess like Voodoo Doll and like Stonehill and other stuff also makes sense.
I have literally never played against a Ratcatcher.
I actually just kept in Tal'Daram and put in like 2 Mortal Coils.
Seems good.
Like,
Okay.
I don't even remember what the 3rd card is, but it wasn't a 3-drop, so
Yeah.
And I did get to Tal'Daram a Rin the First Disciple and Hellfire, and then they couldn't kill their own Rin, so I just started playing Seals right away. Felt amazing.
Wow.
Tal'Daram's still pretty good in that deck.
Seems okay. Reganus, how about you? What have you been playing?
I've been playing, wait for it, more standard than wild. Dun
dun dun!
Part of that, I hit Legend and Wild for the expansion, which was one of my goals. And because I know that all the new creations and innovations that come are a lot of standard decks, and so I just wanted to be a part of that because I missed it a little bit. So I got up to 15 right before Witchwood, and then I've just gone from 15 to 10 with some odd hunter, odd rogue, a little bit of control mage, and then recently just a mid-range elemental shaman with Shudderwock.
I've seen that deck floating around. Are you playing it's like a Keleseth version?
Yeah.
That one? Yeah.
Jinja Ninja's deck. It's got Bloodlust.
Yes, 2.
And no life drinkers.
Oh man, Bloodlust. Just a very fair and honest way to play Hearthstone.
Listen, Overrun is better than 10 1-mana Shudderwocks.
I notice you say something about Mally Druid in top 100. What is this? I've also heard of this Togwaggle Druid. Have you seen this deck for Wild?
Yes. So
have you played against it?
No, I haven't played against it. I played it a little bit. Okay. A couple of the people on other servers hit rank 1 legend with it, and it's basically Mally Druid, but you take out the Malagos and all the spells for a fewer card combo, which is Aviana Coon, Togwaggle, and Azalina Soul Thief. So
you take their ransom.
Decks, you give them a ransom, copy the ransom. They can take their deck back if they want, but then you're taking it back, and then you just beat them with their deck.
It's beautiful. I just love the fact I didn't get it when I first saw it, and then it just all of a sudden the lights went on, and I was like, I see everything now. It's so amazing. You actually get to use both of your UIs in that matchup.
Oh, I know.
Because you want to like draw as many cards as you can. That deck is sweet.
And when Botticus played me for 80 gold earlier this week, he got me a pack that had a golden Azalina Soul Thief.
Ooh.
I might have to try a while.
With some Zoo Warlock.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that Librarian, then Keleseth, then Flame Imp turn? That was all 100% RidiculousHat ordering right there.
And it just didn't matter. The game just wasn't even remotely close.
Nope, the secret I was testing for was Counterspell, which is good because the Librarian would have been strictly worse against it. So, there's that.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yeah, that deck sounds like super fun, though. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, again, is that the Soul Thief Togwaggle deck doesn't kill you right away, and the Mally kind of does, and so there might be some value there.
Yeah, that's like the one thing that Mally still has is you don't have to finish out the game and try to play with their cards, and that's something I'm more comfortable with, so I'm sticking with that for now. And I have got to add in Ferocious Howls and one Witchwood Piper to pull out either your Faceless, or if you've drawn those, then you get Aviana or Malagos. And so it's been fun to play something I know, but still get a couple new cards in.
And Appa, how you doing on ladder, buddy?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of any corner case scenario where that ordering is correct.
There aren't any. Trust me.
No, there is. There's one that I can think of. You're playing against Priest, and your next draw is exactly Despicable Dreadlord. It could be better to have a 4/5 than a 5/6.
It's.
I love it.
I appreciate it. He was mage, by the way. I was testing a secret. And so I basically just said to myself, well, I want this explosive runes to deal me as much damage as possible. So let's lead with the worst minion that also synergizes with the other minion if I play the other one first.
Okay. Oh, actually, I figured it out. You wanted it to be explosive runes because you didn't care about taking more damage, so that I couldn't just ping off your Kobold Librarian with my hero power, and then you kept it 2/2.
Sure. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Hat sees the lines, man.
Yeah, not just I'm jamming my cards out there as quickly as possible. That's totally not what I was doing.
We're aggressively giving you the benefit of the doubt right now.
I feel so benefited. Like, I don't have a choice in this.
All right, anyways, back to your question on ladder. Last episode, had I hit legend in standard yet?
I feel like the answer is yes, but assume no.
Okay,
no, you hit it. Remember, you hit it day of because you played Q Block and
oh yeah, that's right.
dumpster people.
Yeah, I hit legend in standard with Q Block, and I'm technically top 100 in wild right now, but that's only because I got in at like 67 or something and haven't played a game, so I'm at like 94. Because I want to like try and hit high legend in wild this season, as well as standard on NA. But I also have a goal of getting legend in standard wild and standard on EU. So I've been playing a lot on EU since the expansion came out. And since I don't have a lot of dust on there, I crafted the cheap powerful decks like Baku Paladin and Baku Hunter. And Hunter was good for a while, but then people just started playing Taunt Creeper or Tar Creeper into the 4-mana gain 6, get a 3/6 with Taunt into Apple Bomb.
It's
just like, well, I can't win.
It turns out that a deck with literally nothing but recurring taunts forever and life gain, not great for the burn deck.
Yeah, by turn 4, my Druid opponent had 48 life.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Let me divide that by 3 real quick. You're dead.
And then I had a lot of priest cards from before rotation because I played a lot of combo priest and spiteful priest. So I put together spiteful priest, and I'm starting to climb back up with that one a little bit. But the aggro decks have been kind of face planting into giant walls for the past couple days. So I'm really working on climbing with spiteful priest. So hopefully by the time next podcast rolls around, I'll be legend. But we're working on it because I've gone up to like rank 2, down to rank 4, up to 3, down to 4, up to 2, down to 4. It has been like big swings, and it hasn't felt great. But I've just been trying to keep my head straight and push on through to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of the new expansion, that this meta changes by the hour, if not by the minute. So, totally understandable. We'll talk about that in depth later. But, I mean, it's amazing how the new ladder changes just give us all so much more time. Like, you're talking about, it's the 19th as of the time of this recording. And you're talking about getting legend on your 3rd server. So, that's the sort of thing that if you had started at rank 16 in all formats, that would not have ever happened, I don't think.
Yeah, after EU, I'm gonna try and climb as high as possible in Asia. So
Are you going to go for the old
that's
Zixo?
that is my biggest ladder goal outside of like finishing rank 1 legend is legend on all 3 servers plus wild.
It's the good old quad legend.
Quad legend, because who needs a life, you know?
But do you ever think
When you-
about the
When you got
achievements?
quad legend.
Do you ever
Don't
think
think that
about
I
the
haven't
achievements we
thought
have
about.
now? And like Zixo under the old system without ranked floors used to get rank 1 legend on all 3 servers.
Yeah, that's insane.
Ye old Zixo.
It's like I'm just trying to think about the kind of time investment and energy and win rate that takes, and it's kind of hard to process as possible.
For all of those, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Funny
Yeah.
story about Zixo. Back when I used to only get deck lists from Hearthstone, and I saw people posting about it, I was like, well, what the heck is this deck? Does everyone just go 6-0 when they play it?
Ah,
Oh my gosh.
man. But also yes. So for me, I hit legend with even paladin while on vacation. It was wonderful. Both the vacation and the legend, and also even paladin is wonderful. With Strife Crow's list, it was very, very good. I was winning a ton with Tempo Rogue on day 1, and then by day 3 it wasn't super great. So I played Baku Face Hunter for 5 games. I was 5-0, and then 10 games I was 5-5. So pretty typical with how that deck works because it's so matchup dependent. But like I started off rank 1 0 stars. 10 minutes later, I was at my final boss. This deck is insane. 10 minutes later, back at 1 0 stars. This deck sucks. So I had to reposition myself, but Strife Crow's even pally is really, really strong. We'll talk about that later, but I've enjoyed my trip back up to the legend ranks, and now I'm just playing everything I can. I've run out of deck slots so many times this expansion.
Dude, Baku Hunter is like so polarized. Like I picked it up at like rank 8 or something on EU, and I just shot up to rank 2 with like 78% win rate or something. And like as of today, I'm at 49% over like 100 games.
I
Yeah.
remember a tweet that you said, like, I stopped getting Huffer
Oh,
from my
yes, I
animal
played 2 days in a
companions.
row. I like kept track. I didn't get Huffer in 2 days, and then I got him after I tweeted that, and then I lost.
It's
So I
never
was just
Huffer.
like, I was like, okay, it's just not in the stars right now.
Yeah. Or not in the legend points. Okay, so before we get into too deep of a discussion of the ladder, we're actually going to spend most of the cast on that, so let's get into the news real quick, where Botticus will tell us about all the things going on this week.
All right, so news this week, we have a few items here. The Witchwood came out, guys. Did you realize this? Were you aware that? Oh, okay.
I don't know what you just said because you didn't say it correctly. There you go.
So, all right. So this next point, whenever I'm listening to a podcast and they bring up something that the hosts haven't looked at yet, I always get a little upset. Well, all you listeners can be upset now because I guess Ben Brode answered some questions on this YouTube video here, and I haven't watched it yet. So be angry at me.
I
not watching it.
apologize to everybody who listens to this podcast that's like that, because you must hate me every episode. It's like, hey, did y'all see this? Botticus is like, yeah. Hat's like, this is awesome, and I'm just like, what is this? And I'm clicking on the link like as we're going.
Well, like
It's-
before I was on a podcast, I always used to think that, and now, and like I got on this podcast and I was like keeping track, like I would be pretty up on the news, and now it's just like I feel like for the past month at least, I just have a link comes up and I'm like, oh, why haven't I watched that video yet? I should probably have done that before the show.
Botticus, I'm going to keep up with all the news. Also, Botticus, I'm going to sign up to be the head caster for UHL and take over all the show posting duties on Concede. And wow, I don't have any free time anymore.
And also get Legend on 2 servers.
Yeah.
You know?
That's while he's doing everything else.
Don't think that if I didn't have a job, I haven't thought about trying to do Legend with all 9 classes in 1 month.
You are
definitely-
mainlining Hearthstone into your veins right now.
I've definitely thought about that. But yeah, anyway, check out this video with Ben Brode answering questions. I will probably not actually check that out, but I'll say I'll check it out because that makes the listeners happy.
I appreciate your honesty. I did watch it for what it's worth, and it is interesting, and he's got cool stories about, were there any cards in Hearthstone that were better than you thought? And he's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of them. And were there any combos you saw you didn't see? Oh yeah. And then how did the fatigue mechanic get born? It's actually Jeff Kaplan. Jeff Kaplan from Overwatch is responsible for the fatigue mechanic. Because they told a story about he was playing a game in Alpha, and it was a really close game, and he was going to win the next turn, and then he drew when he had 0 cards in his deck, and he just lost. Because that's how most card games are built, that when you draw with an empty deck, you just lose. It's like, well, the rest of the game didn't matter. And so Brode was like, and they made fatigue. So it's just kind of cool behind-the-scenes stories. It was for Ars Technica. It was I would definitely recommend checking it out.
Bless Papa Jeff. I love Jeff Kaplan.
Yes,
He's
and
so great.
he's now helped out in multiple games that you play.
Yeah. Overwatch is great. Fatigue games are, I wouldn't say great, but they're fine. They're better than just immediately losing after you draw 30.
They seem really, and you're really happy when you win the fatigue games, right? Because you're like, I just put all of this time into this game, and I was actually able to win. Instead of when you lose those games, it feels terrible because it's like I just wasted the last 20 minutes of my life losing this fatigue match that I actually had no shot at winning. All right. Next piece of news I actually did notice, Chakki is going to join Team 5, the dev team for Blizzard. So I guess he got the coaching position at Tempo Storm, and then pretty much right after that, they offered him a position at Blizzard. So congrats to him. Pretty stoked for him. That should be interesting. Having him over there. This is something that is actually affecting one of our listeners, Donnie DK or Dragon Rider. She is having an issue right now where she's winning games at Legend and losing ranks. So this looks like it's affecting a few people. Hat raised a pretty interesting point before the cast, is that it might be that the people she's beating, since now she's playing against people as low as rank 5, and I've actually seen some Legend players playing against rank 7, 8, and 9, is that the amount of MMR you're gaining is not greater than the number of people that are getting into Legend. So you're kind of in the spiral where even if you have to have a super insane win rate to get out of this cycle of just losing ranks. So hopefully there's a way Blizzard's able to fix that, but I don't really know exactly what they can do. I don't know. Anybody else have anything to say about this?
It makes sense this is happening when so many more people are playing, and there are a lot of people really pushing for Legend, especially under the new ladder system. But it seems kind of strange that Dragon Rider's kind of trapped in this MMR hell where the people she's beating just aren't worth enough to beat the people that are passing her. And that seems impossible to get out of. So I don't know what a solution is here, but this is definitely less of a pressing issue for the high Legend super competitive community, but it's still an issue, right? It feels really bad to win and then get deranked. So I hope they can figure out some kind of solution to allow the Legend players and the non-Legend players to be stratified a bit. Because if you're rank 7 or 8 and you're playing against a Legend player, that probably feels bad too.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is, but hopefully it's gotten to some people at Blizzard so they can fix it, or at least do something where it makes it not feel so bad. Next news item is a hotfix patch that came out. Multiple rounds of hotfixes. A lot of them involved Chameleos, and I was calling this the disguised toast patch because he came out with a YouTube video that basically had a bunch of bugs that involved Chameleos. He copied one of the Worgen cards that flips power and toughness, and it so at the end of your turn, it flipped it so that it had 6 power, and then next turn it turned into a Shadow Reaper Anduin. And so it still maintained the 6 power from the Shadow Reaper Anduin, so when he played Shadow Reaper Anduin, he died. And another one involving Voodoo Doll, and then bouncing it, like if you Voodoo Doll a Chameleos and then it gets bounced to their hand and then turns into a Death Knight or a weapon, and then you kill the Voodoo Doll afterwards, it would kill the weapon or the player. So just kind of a bunch of weird stuff like that. We have a link to all of the different things that were fixed. Let's see. And then there's Mysterious Missives Volume 2. So this is the sequel to what I brought up last week with all of the kind of all the major players in the Witchwood. It goes into a bit of backstory, more lore stuff. Really looking forward to when Eve kind of gets into all this, because she always does a really good job explaining all of this. But we have the link for you all there to read up into that. And then the last item we have here is Iksar reviewing Shudderwock. That was the big, kind of the big news the first day the set released, as everybody was talking about Shudderwock and lots of complaining, as people are to do when they feel things are broken. So it looks like they're looking into potentially, or Team 5 is looking into its power level and if animation times need to change, because for those of you who haven't seen this combo go off, it can last upwards of 2 to 10 minutes, depending on how much life you have and how many triggers are going off. But
yeah, I really hope this isn't a case of like the deck being bad, so everybody just like forgets about it and the dev team's like, okay, we dodged a bullet. I hope they like really look at like animations, because they're like they're cool to look at sometimes, but I mean for like competitive like integrity, it can be like disadvantageous to do something that involves more animations, because you just lose time in the turn to it, and that kind of sucks. So I wish they would look at like maybe having a setting to like turn off animations if you don't want them, but have it as a default or something like that.
Reganis, you were playing Shudderwock a little bit, right?
A little bit, but just in the mid-range shaman, not the OTK. So I haven't experienced anything over just 30 seconds or less of animations.
I mean, but that's kind of telling, right? That it's a 30-second animation for a card that you're not even trying to abuse. I mean, the Shudderwock OTK deck, the deck has abysmal win rates, really, really poor. But I think it's worth noting for anyone listening that we want to make sure that we understand the distinction between the animation times and power level. And so far, power level, the deck is kind of dried up in representation, and there may be a build out there for the OTK, or it may be a usable card, but as far as the user interface problem that we are dealing with the animations, it is a major issue. It is a huge user experience disruption. Like, it just feels really bad to lose to, and when Disguised Toast might not be the great example because he's so good at combo decks, but when he plays 10 1-mana Shudderwocks from hand and then goes and lays down on his bed while the animations play out and just lays there for 5 minutes, that's not good for the game. Like, that's just not a good look.
Yeah, that's my only deck on Asia right now, and I lay in bed and watch Netflix sometimes and play Hearthstone while I'm waiting to fall asleep. And I made the mistake playing a Shudderwock game on mobile. I almost, like, I was comboing off and I almost didn't win because I couldn't like double click the Shudderwock to play it before it bounced to my hand. So that one went to the rope, and I was sweating a little bit after that one.
yeah, just so the listeners know about the whole OTK Shudderwock thing, like a lot of people are like kind of letting that happen. If your opponent gets 2 Shudderwocks back in their hand that cost 1 mana, you just concede the game so that you don't have to waste your time and your opponent's time waiting for all the triggers to go off. Because if they have even just 1 Life Drinker, 1 Serenite Chain Gang, and 1 and Grumble and the Murmuring Elemental, it's 57 damage. Like on turn with 10 mana, it's 57 damage. So unless you have more than 57 life, or
just let it go.
Yeah,
just let this one go.
Just concede. It's going to be really hard for them to mess up the combo. Just you can concede those games. It's okay. You don't have to let the animations go off for a ton of time.
But still, they got to do something. Like they can make it faster,
Yes.
even if there's ways for us to deal with it.
Like you were saying, like the deck's obviously not very great. Like I think it has like a niche, but definitely want to kind of distance the power level versus like away from the animations, because I don't think the power level's an issue, like even remotely. It's just like the way the deck ends the game really sucks to play against.
Yep, and that's all the news for this week.
Well, you say that's a short segment. I got a shorter segment for you. How about some tournament results the week after a new set comes out? Let's hit it.
It's the grand tournament.
All right, so there was a tournament. There was one tournament, but it's the Hearthstone Witchwood Innvitational. Super fun tournament. 8 players were invited to play the day after the expansion came out in kind of a show match format. There were 2 teams, USA and Europe. For Europe, it was Orange, RDU, Sjow, and Tyler. For USA, it was Ali Straza, Dog, Firebat, and Savids, who I'm pretty sure is from a Scandinavian country. But we're glad to have him. USA, go, go, go. RDU lost to Firebat in the finals. It was a weird format where if your team member wins, you get an extra ban, and they had all 9 decks represented. It was a goofy show match that was a lot of fun to watch. I would recommend checking it out if you want to see day 1 chaos, but there is nothing in this meta that is representative of anything you will really see other than the obvious decks, right? Like Q-Block was played here and was still good. There's some varieties of aggro mage, but the decks that these players were playing were 100% like Theorycraft prototype. Let's see what's going on here. Firebat was playing aggro mage with Nightmare Amalgam to trigger his bonfire elementals, for example. And it was fun to watch, but it's difficult to report on the same way that we would report on any other tournament. So I want to make sure that's clear. It's fun, and that's about as far as it goes. With that being said,
they had to play 8 cards from the new expansion in each of their decks.
Yes,
that was a requirement. So some of the decks are going to look a little awkward because if you've seen any of the decks out now, a lot of them are not playing many Witchwood cards. So being forced to play 8 of them is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and there were a couple notable games here. Ali Straza lost to Orange early on when he was playing Shudderwock Shaman, and he got off the full combo, and it took a little while, and the casters had to fill some air, but casters did a good job. It was mostly Admirable and TJ, and they did a great job casting here. There were a couple of matches that I'd recommend watching just because they do highlight the player's play skill in an unfamiliar meta. The last game of regulation, which was Firebat versus Sjow Game 5, and the third game of the finals, Firebat versus RDU Game 3, they were both super duper close. I would recommend watching Firebat Sjow, the last game of the not grand finals portion. It went, Sjow stabilized at 1 and came back to win the game after an absurd couple of turns that involved a Witch's Cauldron that got mind controlled. So I will leave it up to you to watch. It's Control Priest versus Odd Paladin, and Firebat plays it masterfully, but Sjow manages to escape by the skin of his teeth, and it was super fun to watch. I would also definitely check out Firebat versus RDU, because a deck against a Burn Mage was able to stabilize at 3 life, so it says a lot when that's able to happen. And we don't really have any tournaments this weekend. All of our tournaments start next weekend. Again, this is kind of a dead area for tournaments while the rotation happens and everything settles. No one wants to run one this weekend. But next weekend, HCT Taipei resumes the 27th through the 29th, so you'll definitely be hearing about that in 2 weeks' time from this show. And that's all the tournament results that we have. Any of y'all watch the Invitation a little bit?
I just heard the win 1 out of 5 matches win the invitational meme.
Yeah, I
That
think
was-
Team USA did not win a single match in regulation,
Yeah.
but entered into the finals and then won the tournament.
Yeah,
20%
and
win rate.
For every match that they lost in the pre thing, the EU got to ban a class from their opponents. So the EU got to play whatever 3 classes they wanted, any 3 classes they wanted, and then USA had to pick from the remaining 5 that they didn't ban. So, and USA won anyway. So
With Hunter, Mage, and Shaman. And EU played
Yeah.
Paladin, Warrior, and Priest.
Warrior, interesting.
Yeah, it starts with War, and you're like, yeah, and then it ends with Rear, and you're like, aw. Because why isn't that a block?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Either way, it was a cool tournament. Always good to see kind of right out of the gates what people are doing. I think it laid a bit of groundwork for what people could start to play, and then just kind of built from there.
Yeah. So, and speaking of setting the stage for the Witchwood, why don't we set the stage for the Witchwood with some explanations?
So, are we skipping the thank yous? That thank you.
We're gonna edit this out and we're gonna do some thank yous. I
Great.
got a bumper. I totally went out of order. And thank you to our reviewers. You matter a lot to us, and patrons, you matter a lot to us. And you're the only ones that are gonna hear this. So let me go ahead and.
Hannah's just really excited to talk about some Witchwood
Are
decks,
you
so-
not? Of course I am. But we want to make sure we stop and smell the flowers and take the time
I
to
love
thank
how
people.
defensively he said that. He's like, "Are you not?" I am.
Why would we not be excited? Anyways, let's do the thank yous before we get into the Witchwood explanations.
Rock is dead.
Hey, Appa.
Don't make me do it.
Okay.
Please don't make me do it.
All right. I will read this review. I will
can't
do
deliver
that.
these puns as well as you do.
Okay. I want to make sure I lead off here. This person is a big fan of cats, and every single time they said podcast, I'm pronouncing it that way not because I live in New York, but because they spell it PAW' cast, as in a cat's paw. And the review title is Possum Hearthstone Podcast from Betray the Martyr. Thank you for your April 1st review. We appreciate it. Hello, peoples loving this podcast, as I really like me some Hearthstones. Great conversation with community about Hearthstone play. They cover all the best Hearthstone news, tournament news, etc., and have their own cool little segments. Love the longer podcast runtimes, and I love kittens and all animals in this fine earth. Keep it up and cheers. Betray the Martyr, thank you so much for your fine review, and give our regards to any feline friends that happen to be around.
But it wasn't animals. It was aminals.
It was aminals. I didn't know that until right now. Oh boy. Well, we read that. Thank you, Betray the Martyr. I appreciate that. And the aminals caught me by surprise somehow. All right. You guys want to talk about the Witchwood?
Yeah.
Witchwood. Reganus, you got to do it.
Witchwood.
Yeah, we did it. All right. Explanations.
All right, everyone. So, kind of what I've been seeing, and what I think probably all of us have been seeing on Twitter, and what all the listeners are probably asking is, what should I play? It includes like, what should I play? What cards should I craft? How the heck do I beat cube lock? So I think obviously this explanation is going to be just kind of great for all of us to just delve into what we've been playing, what's been working, what hasn't been working, and just general kind of advice, like basically what I assume everybody else thinks is craft Gen and Baku, and pretty much everything else you can hold off on for a while. But just kind of how to stay informed and everything. So I kind of said here, telling listeners what to play at a time like this is quite hard. There's a ton of shiny new toys that everybody wants to play. And unless you already saved up just a ton of dust or just bought a ton of packs, it's pretty hard to decide what decks are actually good and which ones are just kind of, a flash in the pan. Because right now the meta obviously has a ton of unrefined decks. So I'll go over just my quick first experience, and then I actually want to hear from Reganisprime after this. But the first deck that I talked a lot about on this podcast and also Blizzlet was the Elemental / Book of Spectres Mage. I really thought that Book of Spectres was going to be able to carry it really hard, but it was immediately apparent to me because I was at work all day and I was keeping track of Twitter and watching who's winning and what's winning and what people are doing really good with. And I think that's when I forgot his name, but was playing the Cauldron Odd Paladin hit rank 1.
Gallon.
Yeah, when Gallon hit rank 1 with that Odd Paladin, and I queued into one right away, it was immediately apparent to me that this deck was just not going to work because there was absolutely no way you could keep up with Odd Paladin and their hero power. So I still do think that book is extremely powerful. It's just that the shell you have to play it in is not doing anything truly broken. And I think a lot of these decks right now just have these synergies that are above and beyond the power level you get from book. So I would hold off right now. I have some ideas on some things. Like I've seen a lot of Kobold apprentices running around, which is something I never expected to see. But it might have a little life, but really the mage hero power cannot keep up with the upgraded even or odd paladin hero powers, and with how powerful paladin is right now, I don't think you can just play a deck that has Book of Spectres giving you a ton of value and playing well statted minions that aren't doing anything broken. Another deck that I've definitely seen a lot of, I know Appa's played a bunch of it, but Reganis, you've also said you've been playing a bit of Odd Hunter. So tell me kind of why you started playing this deck and just kind of your thoughts on it, how it seems to be positioned right now.
So it's kind of the same reason that when I wanted to hit Legend with all the classes for Warlock, I picked Zoo, because early Zoo, in like the first year that Hearthstone was out, I wasn't very good at it because I was new to the game. Same thing when Face Hunter was really good. I was new to the game, and so I wasn't good with it. So when I saw this popping back up, I wanted to revisit it with the knowledge that I've learned now. And so since Odd Paladin was kind of the first breakout, for Odd Hunter, you really need a bunch of early 1-drops to be able to contest that. And so I've been running Fireflies and Argent Squires and
Dire Mole, I assume?
Yes, Dire Mole. And then
Do you play the Pirate? I don't know if all the decks are playing the 2-1 that gets charged if you have a weapon.
I think that's in there, and then also the Glacial Shard.
Okay.
And
Candle Shot, I assume.
Yeah. So if you can hit some of those early Candle Shots and Dire Moles that can soak up a bunch of the recruits, it was doing really well for me early on against a lot of Paladin, but things kind of shift around, and then I was running into a bunch of Spiteful Druid that would just put down taunts and gain a bunch of armor, and then I couldn't keep up with it. But overall, it's been really cool to see it come back.
Do you play tracking in your list? That's a card that I've seen in a couple lists, and I don't really know that I understand it. But do you know? Have you played tracking in your list, or do you just play other cards?
Yeah, I played tracking in all of my builds just because it helps to grab that extra reach at the end if you need it. I definitely don't keep it early.
Yeah, tracking can help you kind of sculpt a game plan if you draw it in the mid game, and it also functions as like whenever you draw it off the top and like they're at 5, it can function as like a pseudo burn spell because it can go find you like a kill command or something. So it's like just a very flexible card that you can put in there. And you don't want to keep it early, but it's like it's very powerful in the mid and late game. It's like Ponder. Not the same, but you know.
Yeah, I guess you're searching for probably one of your three mana cards most likely, or I guess Leroy is.
It helps you pick like your best card or like specific pieces you're really digging for.
Okay. Yeah, so how do you feel like do you think it's okay positioned right now, Appa, or is it you think it's kind of not in a good place right now?
I don't think it's in a great place right now. I could also be just biased for my just tanking my win rate on it. But I've been playing against a ton of Odd Taunt Warrior, Taunt Druid, and I've been playing against like Paladins, and that the matchup, it's like not bad, but it's also not great. It really depends on like the opening turns. But a lot of the Paladin decks I've been playing against have just cut their raid leaders and stuff, and have put in Tar Creepers and Stone Hills. I'm just like, man, this makes this way harder now.
Yeah, it feels like all of the Cube Warlocks also at the beginning were all still running Mountain Giants and also Tal'Daram, but now I think they've moved to Stone Hills and Tar Creepers instead of the Tal'Daram and Giants, which also probably makes the matchup harder. Because that used to be a reason I feel like you wanted to play Odd Hunter is you could really smork the Warlocks down before they're able to stabilize.
Yeah, that was what I was playing against a lot of whenever I was playing Q-Block on the first day. And the second my opponent went like Diarmal 1, Hero Power you're on 2, I was like, oh no. Oh man. And then like in the mid game I was just at like 6. I'm like, okay, I'm dead. I already used like a Dark Pact and a Spellstone. I can't win this.
Yeah. So the next thing I moved on to after Mage was Odd Paladin, because obviously I saw the Gallon list and I was like, oh, this is a bad idea, but I'm crafting 2 Cauldrons right away because I thought this card was total trash, and it actually ended up being pretty good. I think most lists have cut the second one but are still playing 1 just because it gives you the ability to do something that you weren't able to really do before. Like you get all these interesting cards, and a lot of them are actually pretty good for your game plan. But the real thing with Odd Paladin is that the hero power is just way better than like almost anything else you could be doing. It's just so powerful against so many decks. But I noticed that with so many people are starting to play these other cheap cards, and if you kind of lose board, it feels really hard to get it back with that hero power just because their minions keep getting bigger and you just keep making 2. So if you're not able to snowball it, it can be really hard to kind of stay ahead, I guess. You don't have a lot of great catch-up mechanics, whereas with Even Paladin, which is something I've played a little bit more, the hero power is nowhere near as good, but you get to play these cards that are just so significantly better. You get your Call to Arms, and you're guaranteed to get Tarim instead of Stonehill Defender hoping for Tarim. And I don't know. I just think like your options are better, and it's also just super good, much better in the Paladin Mirror because of cards like Knife Juggler, and you can even play Pyromancer as an option. So I'm really on the even paladin side. I know a lot of pros have been on the odd paladin side, at least from what I can tell. But I know somebody on the podcast hit legend with even paladin, and I'm pretty interested to hear your point of view on it, Hat.
So when you say not as good, would you rather have a sale for 50% off or have a sale for buy one get one free? Because both hero powers make a 1/1 for 1. But one of them you have to buy 2 at once. So what you
If
might
I'm
say,
buying walkie-talkies, I want the buy one get one.
well, okay. that is a misleading comparison because they're meant to be used in pairs. It's why when's the last time you bought a walkie-talkie? How
You're
recently
not
is
a Radio
that?
Shack fam? Come on.
How recently has that come up in your life?
Never.
Do you
Literally
own?
never?
Okay, so it's stop straw manning me. I don't appreciate it. So here's the thing: is that a 1 mana 1/1 is perfectly fine, especially if that card's name is a Silver Hand Recruit. Two mana for 2 1 mana 1/1s, perfectly reasonable deal. And I think what Botticus means to say is that if your board is empty and you got no cards in hand, by all means you'd rather have 2 than 1. But in the early game, you'd much rather have 1 mana than 2 mana. You've got a guaranteed 1 drop every turn. Anytime you have even mana, you have floating mana, you just add a 1 mana 1/1 onto it. It reminds me kind of how Feral Gibberer turn 1 in Arena is really good. Because you just get to kind of add on a 1 mana 1/1 to most of your turns, and that's fine. You also get a ton of cards that are really powerful in general, like one called Call to Arms, which I'm not going to mention anything about, other than it's really good. We've got Blessing of Kings, we've got Equality and Consecration, and then it's the high end that I think really sets the deck apart. You get to play Valenier, Tarim, and Silver Sword, and Silver Sword is a bonkers card. Like,
Yep.
there have been so many games where my board has been cleared like 3-4 times, and then it's like, well, guess I'll play the Silver Sword. Oh, look, I have this crazy huge board now, and every turn you don't clear it, you're probably dead. So, not only do you dumpster the mirror, but I just found the deck to be just about as good as holding the board in the late game against a deck like Q-Block as Odd Paladin was, and your filler cards, the cards that aren't 1 mana, like the cards you're allowed to play, seem a lot better. That's been my experience.
I do want to just bring up one quick interaction with you. I just want to see if you remember back. It was just a couple weeks ago. I might have mentioned something about a even paladin, and I do believe that you might have scoffed and said something along the lines of that doesn't sound like a deck. That doesn't sound like something that will be possible.
That does sound like something I'd say, and I will take credit for it, but I don't remember it specifically, but I believe that I was a jerk. That's very plausible.
No, definitely was not a jerk. I just want to bring up that you kind of were like, odd or even paladin doesn't sound like it's going to be a thing. And I believe that was the first thing Woodford said actually when he saw the even cards, is just that he was thinking about even paladin with Call to Arms and Tarim, and I really liked that, and so I was kind of on the even train even before. But anyway, that's too much about paladin. It's a great deck. Definitely something I really think that if you have an opportunity to play, you should.
And we should mention, it's kind of insane how impactful these odd or even decks are. I don't think any of us saw this coming. Like, I will call it a straight up miss on my part. I expected these cards to be kind of cool builder rounds that were going to be like tier 3 decks, but like if you're a free to play player and you only get one legendary, go ahead and make one of these, and then you'll have a whole bunch of decks available to you, and it'll be fun and exciting and probably not that good. That's not what we got. We got really viable strategies.
Yeah, I was expecting maybe 2 to 3 decks. I was expecting potentially even Paladin, potentially Odd Warrior with like a more control or even a Taunt Warrior theme, and potentially Odd Hunter. But this next deck that I'll talk about I was not expecting at all, which is Odd Rogue. And we've seen a few different versions of Rogue. A lot of people have kind of different opinions on it, but I never would have guessed Odd Rogue. But man, 2/2 Dagger is awesome. It's just like, I'm going to load up my Hunter hero power kind of for one turn, and then I just get a free one the next turn, and then like you can just do all kinds of stuff. And obviously it's significantly different than Hunter hero power, but it's just like, I didn't know how good a 2/2 Dagger would feel. I was watching Zalay stream, and they were kind of talking about the different inclusions, and I added a green skin into my my odd rogue, and even just like making a 2/1 weapon into a 3/2 weapon felt really good. The amount of damage you can get out is better. And then a couple times I was able to upgrade a weapon that had a deadly poison on it, and that felt amazing. So I really think that Greenskin is probably, in my opinion, a little bit better than the Cobalt Scalebanes that I've seen in a couple lists. But definitely, I think it's worth trying out. Reganis, I know you've played a bit of Odd Rogue, right? What's kind of your take on it? What cards have you been playing? What have you liked in it?
Just initially, I like that with this new mechanic, we're getting to see new upgraded hero powers that we didn't see with Justicar because they didn't want to run a 6-drop before. And so I've had a lot of fun with the upgraded dagger. I haven't played like a value tempo one. I've played a lot more aggressive with the Kobold Apprentice and just the Cold Bloods. I think one Sinister Strike, and so it feels a bit like the Odd Hunter, but I like that it has the Vile Spines. It has just a little more meat to it, especially with the Hench Clan Thugs. You can really
that card
get you rolling.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the defining cards of the deck for sure, is the Hench Clan Thug on 3. If you're able to use that 2/2 dagger to either control the board if it's like another early game deck, or just start to make like a big threat on turn 3 is quite powerful.
That card's reminding me of Tomb Pillager, not in terms of the giving you a really valuable coin thing, but in terms of Rogue once again having a super powerful, slightly undercosted mid-range or mid-game threat. You're hitting for 5 on turn 4 with it.
Yep.
I'm really impressed by how impactful it's been, and it's found its way into Miracle Rogue already, and Casey already said its core, so that's basically the Bible.
Did Reganis, did your list have Fungalmancers in it? I've seen that in a few lists, or was that like later?
I don't think I had them in there, but I didn't have Scalebanes either.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Right now.
I'm pretty sure Zalay did not have. They cut the Cobalt Scalebanes for the Fungalmancers because it was essentially extra charge damage by buffing right away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the way I saw Greenskin. So I forgot, I should have posted my list in the Discord, but I'm kind of tweaking it. It's a fun deck. I like playing the Tempo Rogue type decks, but I know there's a lot of people that have been playing other versions of like Tempo Rogue that are not odd focused, so it allows them to play cards like Backstab, and a lot of them are playing Keleseth, which I don't know that I don't really know that the advantage you're getting from Keleseth feels worth it to me, but I think I would much rather play like Saps and Eviscerates, because those feel really good if you're looking to not be playing an odd version. But I'm not really sure. Do you have an opinion on this, Hat?
Tempo Rogue was insane for me day one, and then got not good. Like, it feels fine, but it feels like a good deck from the last meta that people were playing because it didn't require a lot of innovation. I feel like it's getting left behind pretty aggressively, and I would not want to play it in a meta where Taunt Druid is everywhere, because that's not a good matchup. Really not.
Yeah, I will mention that some people have been doing really well with Quest Rogue, and if you are having trouble beating this Taunt Druid deck and are seeing some Warlock decks that are not playing too many Mountain Giants or maybe more controlling ones, I think it's a great choice. It's very, very, very meta-specific, but a lot of people started switching back to the more aggressive decks because of Quest Rogue. So it's...
I don't know if it's meta-specific. 2 people are rank 1 legend with it right now. Like, on 2 different servers. The secret is Vicious Scalehide. That card's it's for those that don't know, that's the 2-mana 1/3 rush lifesteal. The card's really good on turn 2 against aggressive decks. Also, really good as a 5/5. Really, really good as a 5/5. So even though you're losing Ferryman, the format as a whole has been depowered and slowed down a little bit, and you have access to Fan of Knives, which is kind of good against Paladin. And by kind of good, I mean really, really good. So multiple people are rank 1 legend with Questrogue right now on multiple servers. I think it's got some potential to be a legit tier 1 deck.
I think it was kind of a reaction to the super greedy control decks. And the more people are playing with them, they're just like, oh, 5/5s are good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it turns out you can still kind of beat the, I think it's the non-hunter. I think the hunter decks kind of punish the quest rogue deck, but all of the other ones are just slow enough where I think you can kind of get enough of an edge against them.
Yeah, I think you have draws that can like really beat everybody, but turns out Glacial Shard doesn't freeze hero powers, so it'll just go tap 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 tap.
Tap, 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 tap. All right, so I guess the other deck I have on here is Q-Block. Turns out, still good. I was playing this quite a bit yesterday, and it felt like I would play my weapon and it would get destroyed, and I would still win games. So if people are like, a big thing is, I noticed this interaction earlier on Twitter is somebody said, I think it was along the lines of Q-Block is still the best deck, and then somebody was like, is it really the best deck? It's not even doing that well. And somebody had a pretty perfect response, and it's like, when everybody's teching in 1 to 2 weapon removals and 2 silences in their deck, and Q-Block is still winning, that's the sign of a really good deck.
Oh yeah, that was Civis and Soleil, I think. Civis was like, yeah, is this the best deck? And Soleil's like, well, it's still winning with all of this hate. So...
Yeah. So I think it's good. I know you played it have you played it since you hit legend with it, Appa?
No, actually. I just like got legend. I was like, all right, on to the next thing on the list. But I mean, it still felt really powerful. My thing with it is like, Taunt Druid is like the other contender right now, but I think Q-Block's nut draws are just way better. So
Yeah.
like that's what kind of pulls me towards Q-Block versus Taunt Druid or like Quest Rogue or something, like as one of the best decks or the best deck is like it plays this really, really good grindy game, has like all this card advantages, so good against like wide board aggro, and then it can also kill you on 6 or 7.
Yeah. I do think that like you can just put, if you're playing against Quest Rogue and Taunt Druid, you just put Mountain Giants back in, and I think it improves your matchup against them. Again, you're going to be a little bit worse against the aggressive decks, but I think you are already pretty good against
My
the
thing
aggressive
with
decks.
Mountain Giants and Q-Block, and I do agree, the Mountain Giants make your aggressive matchup like worse than having more anti-aggro tools. But even there, I think the cards like the Mountain Giants are fine to have in there because like you play them early, like after clearing the board, and then like you just start clocking them with an 8/8, and like they're either trading or they're dying to this man.
Yeah.
So like,
Plus, I think it's good in the mirror too. I really like
yeah.
Mountain Giant in the mirror.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably pretty good against Druid because like they'll either like waste or naturalize on it or just not have an answer. It'll just be like 8 cube 16.
Yeah, it seems like the early debate was, do I play Mountain Giants, Facelesses, or Godfrey? And Godfrey is kind of falling out of almost every list I see, because from what I've seen in this meta, Q-Block is a mid-range deck, and I think that's secretly been the case all along, that you're not a control deck, you're a mid-range deck with really good removal, and then you play threats and you kill them. And so Godfrey is great if you're behind. Godfrey on an even board wipes both boards, and you usually don't want that, and Godfrey when you're ahead is unplayable. So there was a Trollden clip, I think, where a person played Godfrey and wiped their own board, including 2 Void Lords that popped and killed the Void Walkers that came out of them. It's just 2 damage each tick is so much damage. The likelihood of it clearing both boards is so high, and Q-Block needs the board at some point. So I don't know. I think that Godfrey is probably not going to be a permanent addition in Q-Block. In Control Warlock, if that exists again, absolutely. But in Q-Block, probably not. And that means there might be room for Mountain Giants and for Facelesses, but Facelesses are generally better for your combo and for a lot of utility purpose. So Mountain Giant's still really good, but you have to be in a slower meta for them to be valuable, and right now we're really not in that. So Meaty hit rank 1 legend, and his list had no giants, 1 faceless, double Tar Creeper, double Stonehill.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I like in Q Block over like a more control lock version is Dome Guard. I call it Dome Guard because that's where it goes, to the dome. And it feels like you need a card like that against like these Taunt Druid decks, and also these Shudderwock decks, which were all the rage on day one, and then everybody stopped being able to win with them. Because it probably wasn't very refined, and everybody realized that aggro is actually still quite playable and pretty good, and it was not very good against those decks. So definitely has a super low win right now, but I also think it's one of those decks that they had a lot of extraneous cards in it that you just don't really need, and I feel like there's a ton of refining that you can still do it. I think it will eventually still have a place. I don't know that it's right now, but maybe it looks something a little different, like maybe a mid-range shaman deck. I think you might know a little bit something about this, Reganus.
Yeah. I saw the even shaman, and I thought about that, but I gathered a bunch of deck lists on the first couple days, and the one I had built was just a Keleseth mid-range shaman, and it's so crazy because coming from a meta where shaman was terrible, and today before the show I was playing a game and I just did a 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and then I bloodlusted. And I just felt like I was winning with the most vanilla Hearthstone cards ever.
But like literally vanilla, like actually from that set.
Yes.
That's sweet. So do you kind of like the mid-range version now? Like what do you feel like? What do you feel advantaged against? What do you think the benefits to playing kind of this? Because this deck still does have Shudderwock at the top, but it obviously it plays like it's like a Bloodlust deck that kind of does a bit of flooding, and then just has the opportunity to like Shudderwock later.
Yeah. So I'm running the elementals just because that's the strong mid-range way to go with shaman right now. I'm running 2 hexes and 1 Earthshock, and so it feels really good against Warlock. It also feels pretty good against the Taunt Druid. I actually played a Hand Druid today, which was weird. The Earthshock helped out with that. Twilight Drake. But yeah, I haven't been able to get a good spread of opponents to be able to tell about the other matchups, but it definitely feels good against Q Block, which it didn't before Witchwood.
Yeah, it seems like it also still has a decent amount of game against the aggressive decks, because I think it plays the I should have known the 3-mana 2/4 that heals for 3. It just plays like a bunch of elementals with taunt, and then like Tolvir Stone Shaper seems like it's been kind of almost a breakout card, and just that it's so hard to deal with that if you're able to get the Divine Shield and taunt.
Yeah, with Hot Spring Guardian and Tar Creeper, it's a lot easier to hit that Divine Shield.
Yeah, and then also if you get to Shudderwock and you've played a Tolvir Stone Shaper and you played an Elemental before you play the Shudderwock, you make a bunch of 6/6s you make a bunch of Tyrians basically.
Yeah,
which is kind of sweet.
Speaking of 4-mana Divine Shield taunts, how about that even shaman deck? Because you know what it has in there? Corpse Taker.
Yours has Corpse Taker, or wait?
Yeah.
Oh, even shaman.
Even shaman.
Okay.
Because it's also got a 4-mana taunt with a bubble, but I got Wind Fury and Lifesteal. How about that?
What's the lifesteals from the
Vicious
2-mana
Scale
1/2?
Hide? Yeah.
Okay.
Deck
So how is that deck? Because I can't imagine playing a flood deck without Bloodlust, but I know you've already a million people have told that to you already, Hat, and you had a pretty good response to it.
My first response is this deck is super fun. My second response is just play Sea Giant on turn 4. My third response is you never run out of gas, just keep hitting them. And then you get to make Wind Fury Corpse Takers and play Flame Tongue Totem. You get to play Defender of Argus again, because your board is always super wide. Like, Paladin can't do anything because you're so much better at going wider. And the 1-mana hero power is really best when you're proactive and tempo efficient. And there is no deck that is better at being proactive about crappy minions on board than Shaman. Even without Bloodlust.
This is such just clean, classic Shaman.
Yeah.
You just like took me back in time. You were like Flame Tongue Totems, Defender of Argus.
Yeah, and Appa, we got double Hex and double Argent Commander. We're going to Northrend. That's where we're going.
So they buffed Hex so that it could go in this even.
Yes, we're calling these future buffs because they nerfed them in the past, but they were secretly future buffs. And you also get to top out at Alakir, Lich King, and then you actually get to play a 3-mana card. It's called Sea Giant. They let you play with it. You get to just sneak that in the deck list there, and so you just turbo out these giants. Now, Amnesiac had a list that had a ton of Wisps and Snowflipper Penguins. I didn't like that list. But you still get Primal Fin Totem, Merkspark Eel, which is the 2-mana even 2/3, that if your deck is even, it deals 2 damage. It's really, really strong, and this list also plays Stormforged Axe, just to control the board for a while, because, I mean, a 2-mana 2/2 weapon is good, a 2-mana 2/3 weapon is slightly better. All you're doing is building this crazy wide board and then taking advantage of it however you can, whether it's playing a Sea Giant, playing a Cult Master, or Argusing, or Flame Tongue Toteming, or whatever. And it's got a good amount of staying power. I have had more fun with it than anything else, and the win rate has been perfectly respectable. Now, would I say this is the tier 1 deck? Would I say go make all the cards in this deck? Absolutely not. But if you have these cards, I would recommend playing it. I believe this is Burrow's list, and it's just really, really interesting and entertaining and different. And it's been the list I think I've played the most of the new expansion since I hit Legend.
So the one card I will bring up that is in all of the previous decks we've just talked about, Shaman-wise, is Hex. And that card is pretty important and actually increasing in value because of this new deck that a lot of people have talked about, which is Taunt Druid. And when I haven't played this deck yet, I've seen a lot of people playing it. I've seen a lot of games, and it definitely looks like it has pretty good matchups across the board, except against maybe Control Mage, because Control Mage has a card called Polymorph, and polymorphing their taunt minions so that they don't get a bunch of taunt minions back with Hadronox is pretty good. And I've actually seen
the frog is a beast, so Witching Hour can resurrect it.
So both Hex affects that, and Polymorph, and actually Tinkmaster Overspark creates both of either the 1/1 or the 5/5 are beasts, which dilutes the pool. And specifically Control Mage is good against this archetype. I've also seen it play oh my god, I just had the name of it. What was everybody playing that destroys the 1-mana spells, the 6-mana card? How do I know? Skulking. Yeah, so that they can't naturalize their Hydronox right away, and then you can just polymorph it before they're able to do anything
that is deep
about it. Yeah.
Man.
I saw Navi playing this. He didn't draw his Geist before they were able to start the Hydronox chain, and he won anyway. The guy, like, his opponent made 3 or 4 boards with Hydronox, and that was through it was through him having a Polymorph and a Tinkmaster Overspark Beast in the pool, and both times Witching Hour got back Hydronox, and he still won the game. It was kind of crazy. So I don't know if Big Mage has a lot of other matchups that are good against it, but I don't know. Has anybody had any experience with Taunt Druid playing it? Maybe
unfortunately for like this section, a lot of the decks, like, I know what they are and I know how they play and everything, but I haven't like gotten my hands on them because I just like abandoned NA for like a week, and that's where all my cards are.
Oh, so your EU collection doesn't have Hadronox and Master Oakheart? What
That would be
kind of
correct.
free-to-play player are you? I will say we're gonna look back on this period in Hearthstone in probably about 6 months to a year, and we're gonna say Carnivorous Cube was the problem all along, because that card is like Arcane Golem or Khan the Forgotten King. That if you see it, it's an indicator that somebody's doing something they probably shouldn't be doing, and it's gonna be gross, and you're gonna be annoyed at it. Because I was watching Zolay play Q-Block against Taunt Druid, and they went turn 10, Hadronox naturalize it, and then they brought back a Hadronox with a Witching Hour or something else, and then they cubed it and destroyed their own cube. And it's like, this deck gets 4 N'Zoths, and all of them bring back a board full of taunts. That can't possibly be right. And it's abusing all the same.
6, right? Or 7? Is it 7?
It's
Let's see.
you can
1,
max
2,
out at 7,
3,
I think.
4, 5, 6,
Like
7.
double
7.
Witching Hour, double cube, and the original, so that's 7 N'Zoths.
That's a lot.
You get to keep this recursion going, and the elements of Q-Block, you've got a 1-mana sacrifice outlet, you've got a recursion/search card that benefits on tribal synergy, and you've got carnivorous cubes, and you've got incredible inevitability. It's all the same mechanics. This deck is the most likely to be real out of any of the new ones that we've talked about so far, and the ability to just completely lock up the late game is really powerful. And we're going to look back, we're going to say Carnivorous Cube is an indicator of bad things happening. I feel really strong about
It's like cube paired with sacrifice outlets are like very, very busted.
Well, and Sjow is even playing Spirit Singer Umbra now.
Yeah.
Kenny is a genius. Because Kenny is, I'm pretty sure, the only person I heard talking about Cube, and before it actually came out, and like Q-Block and this stuff came out, like people were talking about it, and I think they were talking it in a meme form, and he brought it up. He's like, there's something about this card. I think this card is good, and so shout out to Kenny for knowing that Cube was going to do busted things.
Keep calm and Cube on. You see some.
So those were all the decks I wanted to talk about. I see Hat has some other decks in here that I have very little experience with. So maybe you want to. I guess I have a little bit of experience with Tempo Mage. I was playing the Bird, the 4-mana Bird, because it was cool. And every time I played the Bird, it died the next turn, and usually all my creatures were dead. So I think that was probably matchup based. But
have you birded into Doomsayer?
No, but I did see the Trollden clip of birding into a Flame Tongue Totem for exact lethal. That was sweet.
Ugh.
They pyroblasted with a bird in play to get the Flame Tongue Totem in the middle for exact lethal.
Oh
Vex Crow, I think, is really good. I mean, I haven't played a ton with Crow, but I will say that Cinderstorm in this meta is really strong, and Arcane Missiles in this meta is really strong. Like just the
Kobold Apprentice. What?
Yeah. Now that's not in the Mage deck, listeners. That's in the Odd Rogue deck. But just whatever you can do to throw out missiles against a format full of Paladin 1/1s, you want to throw out some missiles.
Yeah, I've been theory crafting a lot of Shudderwock just stuff, and I'm legitimately thinking about considering putting Kobold Apprentice in there, because it helps in the aggro matchup, and
you can play it over
it's
Life
extra
Drinker.
damage.
I mean, you could not play Life Drinker if you play that card if you wanted.
Yeah.
That's an option.
Yeah. I think Life Drinker is fine, but it really depends. Are you going to go for board more or less? Like the builds that I've seen that play Vex Crow over Life Drinker, a lot of them play Antonidas, and that's kind of interesting, but I think it gives you kind of a second late game out as opposed to just Alaneth and hit face, because, I mean, you're unlikely to play both Alaneth and Antonidas in the same game, but if you play one and it sticks, that's good enough. And I don't know, Tempo Mage is good. I've actually seen a lot of Control Mages. Reganis, I think you said you were playing Big Mage. Do you remember that right?
Yeah, I saw a deck pop up on Twitter, and I'm usually not a Control player, but since I've just kind of taken it easy, I wanted to try it out. And so, yeah, it's the Big Spell Mage, and it has... I was actually surprised I didn't have the cards for it, so I had to craft a second Gluttonous Ooze and 2 Voodoo Dolls because I didn't open them. But for running into aggro decks, it's been really good against those to clean those up, and to the point where I just have like 2 blizzards and a flame strike in my hand, and I was like, I guess I'll just start dumping these for Alana value, I guess.
Yeah, just the thing with Big Mage, I feel like its weakness would be Hunter, but if Hunter's not doing so well right now, I think it's actually positioned pretty well. Feels like it can do okay against the other decks, but that constant 2 mana 3 damage, regardless if you have any taunts or anything in the way, is pretty strong against most of the Mage decks in my experience.
Legit, whenever I'm playing against a slow deck, like I'll go 1-drop. And then I'll be like, all right, the rest of the game I'm hero powering. I'm not playing this companion on 3. I'm gonna play 1-drop and hero power.
Yeah, the hero power, it's the amount of card advantage you generate just by not spending a card and using a button that's as good as a card is just so impossible to understate.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess
cool. I like it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, and things. I can definitely tell things are starting to get refined. Decks are starting to form, and I mean, it feels like we have a metagame approaching our hands that's fairly stable. Like you have your Q blocks and your taunt druids at the very controlling end, and then you have your combo decks like not so much Shudderwock, but definitely like Quest Rogue, and I don't even know much more on that, but then you have the really aggressive side with the Paladin decks and the Hunters and the Tempo Rogues. I guess Miracle Rogue is also one of those that would be more like the combo-ish decks. And then
are you calling the stable? I'm not ready to call the stable at all. Quest Rogue is rank 1 legend. Like that means that we're still learning. There's a lot going on.
Stable in the sense that we're getting our flushed
Figured
out.
Yeah.
Flushed out might be a better way to
but
put
we're
it.
starting to learn. But until Vicious Syndicate publishes their first report, I'm not going to call the metagame stable. So we've got probably about a week.
All right. Well, what about this Tempo Warrior deck? Is that a big putting up big numbers? I haven't seen it at all.
Is that the Rush Warrior deck?
Yes.
Yeah, it will like after the first day, a lot of people were like, "Yo, this deck is the bomb.com." Then people were like, not playing 1-drops. It's not that great.
Well, you got Town Crier, and that's it.
Well, I mean, like whenever your opponent's not like planning on playing 1-drops and early things, it's like it's fairly medium. But like if you're playing against aggressive decks, it's like dope.
Yeah, it's kind of like the mid-range deck, right? Doesn't seem like some of the aggressive decks can tend towards mid-range a little bit, but this seems like kind of the true mid-range deck where Darius Crowley is kind of like the linchpin that feels like it holds everything together almost. Like obviously the rush minions are important, but it feels like a card like that just screams mid-range to me.
Yeah, this is basically a mid-range deck, but you still get to play Corcoran Elite. Red Band Wasp is super good. Really, really good. That's the 2-drop with Rush and when it's not enrage, +3 damage. So like while it's damage, it gets +3 attack. So a lot of times you just play it on turn 2, and it's just a 4/2, just a 2-mana 4/2 that killed a thing. Like it's a lot of face damage, and then you just push. It's I've been impressed by how strong the openings can be and how well it wrecks Paladin, because Bloodrazor is a great card, but you probably aren't good enough against Q-Block. I don't think it'll last, and I don't know if Odd Quest Warrior or Taunt Warrior will last either. I've seen a few of them, but it's such a linear strategy, and all those strategies are kind of falling by the wayside to decks with a little bit more diversity or more innate power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like my impression of this format as a whole so far, obviously we're only a week in, but it's like all of the other classes like powered down because of rotation, and then like Druid and Warlock went Super Saiyan.
Yeah. I mean, so we didn't get to talk about it last week, but I had Warlock in the winner category for this set, and it wasn't necessarily because of any cards that they got, because I don't think that they really got a whole lot of cards like from the set, but it was the fact that all of the other classes that needed cards to catch up to Q block didn't get cards that caught them up to Q block. So Warlock won in the sense that all of the other decks did not win as much.
I
as
also
it
think
needed
it's
to.
really interesting that we all kind of had Druid as like picked as like kind of a loser out of this expansion. Turns out rezzing a Hadronox for 3. Pretty good.
It's Druid
And
keeps
also Spiteful
bamboozling
Summoner.
us.
I mean, Spiteful Summoner too. Like we haven't talked about that deck at all, and Iksar hit Legend with it, and now all I see on my feed are people hitting Legend, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, I was playing Spiteful Druid." I think that's what JR hit it with, right?
Yep, JR hit it with that
from
Prince Fancy, hit
Walnut.
rank 1 Legend. There was someone else that hit it with Elemental Spiteful Druid. Like, the deck is just powerful because...
Yeah, Spiteful's just an awesome build around. It's just like, whenever you play it on 6, it's so good.
Awesome build around. It depends on what side you're on. I definitely played a bunch against a bunch of 4 mana or 6 mana 4/4 plus 12/12s yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, Reganus, what else have you seen? Anything else? We've brought up so many decks. Like, what is there anything that's really stood out to you?
While I was playing Control Mage, the deck that I would lose to the most was Control Priest. Specifically, I think the one that Theo came up with the Dragon Synergy in it. And Scale Worm is just a lot better than I expected. I've really been impressed by that card.
The Tar Creeper Killer.
Yeah.
I mean, it does a lot more than that, but that's just like what stands out a lot to me because it feels like Tar Creeper's in a lot of lists. But yeah, that deck seems interesting. That I guess that's the one thing is Priest went from just like top of the heap right up there with Warlock to almost nobody talks about it except for this Mind Blast deck. It seems like I've heard a couple of people talk about Spiteful, but it really feels like this Mind Blast deck is something other people have kind of referenced.
Yeah.
Have you played it at all, Reganus, or just played against it a couple times?
I think I played it once, but no, mainly just playing against it. And at first I was a little bit surprised by the Mind Blast, but yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense just to get that inevitability going once you Shadow Reaper, and then you can even Alexstrasza.
Yeah, and I've seen some people are playing it as a combo deck, but Theo went on competitive HS and wrote a really great guide to it saying, like, the Alex, then Shadow Reaper, and Hero Power, then Mind Blast, Hero Power, Mind Blast, Hero Power just doesn't happen that much. It's not really a combo deck. It's a control deck with a combo finisher option. And you get to either do the full combo thing if you want to, or you can save Alex until after a Dark Pact, etc. And there's so much going on there that I think it's one of the cleanest lists that we've seen so far out of the expansion in terms of an archetype that might be real, but it's also very difficult to play. Very difficult, and there's a lot of nuance that goes into it.
Yep. And I guess we got 2 more decks to talk about. This Glinda Warlock decks. I've seen like an even Warlock deck, which makes no sense to me because Doomguard and Voidlord and Cube and Lackey and Weapon are all odd cost cards. But I've also seen some decks that play Glinda with the combo of Baleful Banker, so that you can, as Hat's told me many times, you go Glinda, Baleful Banker, the Glinda, Baleful, use the echoed copy of Baleful Banker on the Baleful Banker, and you never fatigue. So what do you know about this deck, Hat? Have you played it?
So I've played Glinda Zoo, where you play Glinda and then you just do whatever it takes to get Sea Giants down, up to and including Snowflipper Penguins. Or you play a bunch of Void Callers or Void Walkers, the 1/3s. There's a lot of ways you can take advantage of it. But Dog has been playing Meat Wagon, Summoner's Portal, Glinda, Control, Warlock. That's a mouthful. And he's been doing well with it. Obviously, Dog deck. Dog is better than you. Dog is better than me. Don't think you're going to take a deck from Dog's stream and also be rank 5 legend, because I can't do it. It's very difficult to do, but it's interesting to see how powerful mechanic Echo is. Just having the option of repeating cards is really, really broken. And I don't think Echo is a broken mechanic, but I think you can set up to do broken things. And there have been a bunch of Trollden clips of him either playing multiple Sea Giants a turn, or questing adventure into multiple Sea Giants a turn, or 5 Gnome Feratus and milling his opponent out. There's a lot of options here, and so I think it deserves mentioning. I don't know if it'll be a permanent fixture, but he's rank 5 legend with meat wagons in his deck, so that deserves some kind of attention.
Yep, I think that deck's definitely interesting. We'll get into this last one because we're going pretty long in the tooth here, but Murloc Paladin. Not even, not odd, Murloc Paladin. I guess this is definitely the deck that makes the best use, I think, out of Nightmare Amalgam, even though obviously Hat has talked about some of the uses in Zoo as a demon, but if there's a deck that makes good use of this new card, Nightmare Amalgam, that is everything, then this definitely feels like a deck that is good. I just brought up a different version because I think it looks like I'm looking at the Boar Control version, but I also saw a version that plays some secrets and Bellringer Sentry, which is pretty interesting. I don't know. I think I've seen this deck once on ladder. Has anybody else seen this going around, this Murloc deck?
Yeah, I've seen a good amount of it. Not like playing against or anything, but on Twitter. It's just like, the thing is like, it's still just a very powerful, solid curve deck. Like, you lose some of the explosiveness because you lose Grimscale Chum and Vilefin Inquisitor, but you still have Lost in the Jungle and Righteous Protector, and you still have the option to go Tidecaller, Rockpool, War Leader Megasaur. Like, you're not really losing those whenever you get that off.
Yeah, the synergy, like the Murloc synergies, are just quite powerful. War Leader is still a super strong card, even though they doesn't have that toughness boost either, and Megasaur does a lot of work.
Yeah, so. I didn't. Whenever they announced the nerf on War Leader, I was like, did this really need a nerf? And then, like, the fact that it's still, like, saw so much play afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, I guess it did.
It's along with also nerfed cards, Fiery War Axe, Ironbeak Owl, Hex. What else has been nerfed and still seeing a ton of play? Like, all those cards are still pretty widely viable. It's kind of amazing.
Knife Juggler.
Knife Juggler. Oh, yeah. Right. Yep. He was nerfed. He used to have 3 attack.
Knife Juggler straight up came back from the grave.
But he used to have 3 attack. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Call the arms.
Well, but that's not the only reason you played that card. It's one of the only reasons, but not the only reason.
It did not come back until that card came came back.
Yes, we saw its resurgence because of Call to Arms, but also I think enough people just like started realizing that if you run it out on 2, it's still fine. It still does the Knife Juggler thing, so downsides aren't that bad.
Honestly, kind of wish it stayed dead. That's one of the cards that is yeah, it just feels like you're in Vegas every time you're playing against it. Like, come on, face, come on, hit my face, and then it kills all your minions and you cry.
Also, Crystal Core was nerfed and is seeing good amount of play right now. The Rogue Quest.
Yeah, I think just before the podcast, oh man, I'm not. Maybe it's late. I don't think it's late, but some streamer was talking about it and how the minions are just too big. Like, making them 5/5s is just too big. So, like, control decks just can't really do anything. Oh, Synth Voss was talking about it and just saying that, that you don't ever have to worry about running out of resources because your minions are just too big when you complete the quest. So control decks just can't really do anything about it, which I don't know that I agree. Like I just think a deck like that is supposed to beat control decks.
Yeah, it definitely. But I also, like, whenever Crystal Core was really good the first time around, I was playing a lot of control, and like, just like the 5/5s, it's like, okay, here's the first wave, and then you clear, and then you like take a breath, and then they're like, okay, Firefly, and you're like, that's 10 for 2. That's so much.
Yeah.
And then they like mimic pod
It's a good deal.
into Fireflies, and you're like, oh my god, I'm dead.
Yeah. Well,
Or just like novice engineer, 2 mana, 5/5, draw
Oh, man,
another
that
5/5.
one feels bad. Like, especially when they use all of their resources in their hand, they're like 0 cards, complete quest, have a board, and you're like clear. And we're like novice, mimic pod, you lose.
oh man.
Yeah.
Well, we're also talking about though when they used to attack for 5 on turn 4 because old Crystal Core and Gadgets and Ferryman was legal, and sometimes they draw 2 Shadow Steps and Preparation.
2 Shadow Steps is so nice.
Yeah, well, whenever I used to Mimic Pod into a Shadow Steps, I felt like I felt like I won a Carnival Cruise. Like, I'm going to Disneyland!
Shadow stepping Firefly when you have 2 of them is so gross.
Yeah. So,
Anyway.
we're running a little bit long, but real quick, should we craft anything right now? Is there anything that we all think we should make? What should we spend our dust on?
Gen and Baku, more specifically Baku, I think. If there's a legendary you craft from the set, Baku I think is the one because it's goes in the most decks, though I do think Gen definitely has potential, but obviously Baku is going to give you the access to the most number of decks. So that seems like the safest craft to me. Everything else is kind of up in the air.
Yeah, Gen is a lot more focused, I think, and Baku is a lot more universal in its applications. I can't really endorse crafting anything right now, except for Camellios Kappa.
Ugh, don't be a troll. Or a chameleon.
I just love that.
That's-
No, but I think I would make sure we have like Gen and Baku, and I think like the epics and every like stuff like that are a lot more important this set than the legendaries. I think spending your dust on like making sure you have like all your epics that you need is probably a better use than trying to craft legendaries. Like I think the only legendary I have left to craft is actually Gen because I don't have it yet. And then after that, I think I have like pretty much all of the cards in the set that see play right now.
I mean, you have to craft those new legendaries, Hadronox and Master Oakheart, because they definitely didn't exist before this expansion.
That's true. I snap dusted Hadronox like 3 times.
Yep, same. Yeah, it's... I don't know. Reganis, you made anything?
Have I crafted anything?
Yeah.
I crafted Hagatha because unfortunately I didn't open her.
That card's good though.
Yeah, she's in my mid-range shaman, but when you curve out in Bloodlust, you don't get to play her, unfortunately.
Oh no, poor
Oh,
me.
no.
I can't play my fun card because my opponent is dead.
Oh man.
I do think the Shaman is like 1 or 2 control cards away from having a very viable control deck and a very viable combo Shudderwock deck if it's not already. Like if people haven't already or aren't able to figure it out now, it's pretty close. So, and Hagatha definitely goes in any control Shaman deck that plays a few minions, I think. That card is quite powerful.
I haven't actually liked. I mean, Hagatha's obviously very powerful in a control shell, but I'm always really scared to put it in the OTK deck because there's always a chance. There's always this chance that it sequences in that it copies Shudderwock and then it goes Murmuring Hagatha, and then you can't win.
That's true.
Well, it has to. Well, what has to happen? So it has to go.
It has to go through the first rotation.
Well,
copy
so
itself.
It goes. You go
You have to
Grumble first,
Yep.
Grumble first, and then Stone
Chain.
Hills, and then
Chain gang.
Hagatha, or Hagatha. Yeah, Hagatha, and then Hagatha before the next shut or the next Grumble, right?
Or so you go through the first rotation. You go Grumble first, Chain Gang, then literally whatever else. Then it finishes, and the second one triggers, and it goes Murmuring because the Murmuring's going to trigger on the second one. I'm just gonna go Murmuring, double Hagatha, and then you just like lose your dudes. It's like, oh no.
That's why I like Primordial Drake. It's obviously not as good, like if you need the extra value, but Primordial Drake won't kill your Shudderwocks.
Yeah.
How long can this go on?
Botticus and I are just like
You're just over there. You're rocking out with your walks out, and I appreciate it and understand it. But I don't know, man. So, as far as crafting goes, I would maybe make voodoo dolls and nightmare amalgams, but the epics in the set aren't all that widely played right now either. Like, they're seeing a little bit of play. But if you look through the card list, it's kind of surprising to see how little of these cards are seeing play. Like, this is probably the most budget-friendly, legendary, approachable set that Blizzard has made in a long time. If you can make Baku and Gen, you can play pretty much everything, and if you start with one, pick Baku. And a lot of the legendaries we were talking about early on were kind of cool, but then falling out of favor. A lot of the epics just aren't seeing a ton of play either, so...
this is like residual Year of the Mammoth format.
Yeah, well, it's...
with like some Raven sprinkled in.
We're still learning, but at least Blizzard has learned not to make their new cards so expensive, but the problem is they made their previous year's worth of cards so expensive, so we gotta wait for that to go away until we get to a more open format. And still, this format is pretty open, but a lot of the shells we're building on are shells we've seen before.
I'm also wondering if this will be... I think it may be the first expansion where a card hasn't been nerfed. Because I don't think anything's like inherently too busted from this expansion.
They'll do something about walk. It might be an animation hotfix, but they'll do something.
Yeah, that's true. I mostly meant like text change on the card, but yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise you could just say Chameleos, right?
But yes, well, they will do some kind of... I don't know if they'll do a power level balance on walk immediately, but I think long term there will be enough dissent in the community about how it feels that they might change something, and they'll definitely do an animation level hotfix if it keeps going. Because the interaction with Serenite is really, really strong, and with Grumble it gets kind of goofy. Alright, well, I'm going to call it explanations. I already played the Serenite bumper. Not going to play it again because double Serenite is triggering people right now. But I will say that our show, which we were like, this is going to be a short show. Nope, 2 hours. So, no emails today, but we do want to give some thanks to people. Let's start off. Thanks to Stephanel for letting us use his cover. Check him out on his channel, linked in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks and BeerBrick.com for decklists. Hearthstone tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs. Hearthpwn for their tournament reports. Show notes for this week's episode are on our website, CoinConcede.com. You can support our show at Patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at Twitch.tv/CoinConcede Join our community chats in Discord at Discord.CoinConcede.com. Write into our email at CoinConcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. And if you want some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Calum, Viriatus, and... It's so fluffy! Coin Concedes. This week. Botticus, you go first.
I would like to coin concede to the Blizzlet podcast. They had me on last week. I had an unbelievable amount of fun. I laughed extremely hard while doing that show. If you don't mind NSFW content, I suggest checking it out. It was just it was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun being on that podcast.
Yay, Blizzlet. I'm going to be on tomorrow as of the time of this recording, and if you're listening to this when we post it, I've already been on Blizzlet, so hello from the past. Reganus, who are you coin conceding to today?
Today I'm coin conceding to you guys for having me on. This is something that I have dreamed about, but kind of shoved away as something that wasn't going to happen because of my schedule. But thankfully to work trips and delayed schedules, this was able to work out. And also to just the whole podcasting community for adding a new layer to the game that I never expected back when I just played by myself for 3 years. It's been a surprisingly positive place. And it's a place where I feel like I've been able to fit in as kind of a bridge between podcast and the WoW community, and encouraging both of them to go check each other out.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. Really glad to have you on. And to provide a little bit of context, what time did you wake up today?
I woke up at 3 a.m. Central, which is 1 a.m. right now in Nevada.
So,
And hey, look, it's almost 1 a.m. again.
yeah, you woke up 23 and a half hours ago. So, thanks for the marathon of staying up for us. Means a lot it means a lot to us how much it means to you. And thanks for everything that you've done for our community as well. I mean, the prime light continues to shine despite being awake for a full day. All right.
Yeah, I was expecting to do that for a year, but that's kind of hard to keep up.
Yes. A lot of people that need thanks and a lot of energy that goes into it. So thank you so much for sharing the limited amount of time you have with us. I'll go next. So I want to give a coin concede to Wicked Good, because Wicked Good is a wonderful person and a good friend of mine, and I've met him now, and that's just fantastic. And also, I was on Off Curve yesterday, and of course, on any podcast episode I'm on, it goes double the normal length, so it's a little over an hour, but we talked about a lot of decks rundown. It's very similar to what we talked about in the deck explanation today, but kind of the encyclopedic, what is each class doing, what is each class playing in the meta right now, and what should I do about it. Coin concede, Lore Master Eve, we played today in UHL. She was a super nice opponent, even though I messed up the time zones, and it was gracious in both rescheduling, and I managed to clinch a win, so team attitude. And Storm Rage for hosting me on Blizzlet in the future for me and the past for you, dear listeners. And Orange for his amazing tweet. I'm going to read this tweet to you. This is a Hearthstone professional, and he said, "Today my win rate in Hearthstone has been about 30%. One of those days where you can't win with anything, it feels like. Just wanted to post this as a reminder that a lot of us are struggling when all you see on Twitter are people that get top ranks with new decks." Orange is one of the classiest dudes in Hearthstone, if not the classiest, and oh my goodness, just to hear this cements my love for him, so props to him for being honest when the social media universe is all about providing a highlight reel and him giving us a brief low light, so thank you so much, Orange. And Appa, give us our last coin concede of the evening.
All right, I'm gonna coin concede to Young Email. Not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I'm gonna go with that. They added me on EU. I think we played on ladder, and I saw it about 10 hours later. So I added them, and they messaged me whenever they got online. They're like, "Hey," it's like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Are you Appa from Coin Concede?" And I was like, "I sure am." And I was expecting like some saltiness from, because that's what I just expect from every friend request from like a game we had played or something. But they were like, "Yeah, I love the show and I listen all the time. It's great." And they were just going on and on about how they like the show. So I was like, you know what? You're gonna get a shout out this week. So I just wanted to coin concede to them because they were very nice, and it's always really great hearing like about like a positive impact you have on people, or just hearing that people enjoy the content you create. And another thing I wanted to talk about is I won a month of premium for HS Replay from an open cup I did, I think like a week and a half ago. I top 8'd that, and that was the consolation prize. Was a month of HS Premium, or HS Replay Premium. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to give it away yet, but I think we'll do that next episode. So stay tuned for that.
Yay, HS Replay Premium.
Yay.
Yay. Well, thank you, Appa. Thank you, Universe. Reganus, where can we find you when you're not here the one time ever?
You can find me on Twitter at Reganisprime. Yeah, it's ReganisPrime. And you cannot find me on Twitch because I don't have time. But you can also find me on Discord at Reganisprime. And the last thing I want to plug is that I mentioned at the top of the show, the blog post that I wrote. It's been a lot of time kind of pouring everything over my entire experience of Hearthstone, along with some personal life applications at reganisprime.wordpress.com. and you can go check it out. It's called Lessons for Life and Ladder. Yeah, maybe there'll be some posts come in the future when I get a little bit more time to write.
I think we can all say we're hoping for that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Botticus, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter at BotticusHS. You could also follow me on Twitch. I'm going to be busy for the next couple weeks, so I don't know if I will be able to get a stream in, but in case I do, you can find me twitch.tv/Botticus.
Appa. Appa.
Appa's muted.
Appa, you're the Appa.
Whoops. I was just talking to nobody. You can find me on Twitter at Appa_HS, Twitch, twitch.tv/AppaHS. Man, streams will be coming in about 2 months because we'll be moving, have the second bedroom. It'll be dope. I can get to stream at night again.
Yay.
But for now, my channel's probably gonna sit there and collect dust for a while.
And then you can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat, on Twitch, twitch.tv/RidiculousHat, streaming Thursdays and hopefully going back to Mondays this upcoming week. Also, I'm in UHL, so whenever my UHL match is happening, I'll be streaming it. And you can find me in Discord at RidiculousHat in any Hearthstone Discord, and I will appear when I can. For now, that is our show. Keep calm and rogue on, and if you see us on the ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory.
You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death. You have triumphed. This time, this hunt is yours.